How do we look back at IPL 17 then? For a start, I'm delighted. It's going to be an adult next year. The IPL turns 18. Wow, that'll be fantastic. But how do we look back? There's many things that happened this year, but this is a small blog, so I'm only going to focus on one or two things. And the one thing that struck me this year was how one-sided the contest between bat and ball increasingly became. Now, as the season drew towards an end, there were questions asked of the batters, and some of the batters didn't like it, and that only strengthens my point that we were far too one-sided early on. There were three factors at play here. One of those is the impact sub that's been talked about a lot. I've addressed that issue specifically in another blog, but what the impact sub did was it freed the mind. And I don't know if we'll see that going further, that batters think, yeah, I mean, instead of 8, if I had 7, I could still go and produce performances like some of the performances we saw this year. Was it the impact sub alone? I don't know if we have enough evidence to isolate one variable and then say that was the cause for some of the dramatic hitting that we saw this year, but it definitely helped. But there are a couple of other things. The pitches. I mean, I used to do these pre-match interviews sometimes before the game, and sometimes the bowlers would come up and I'd talk to them about different things. And a couple of them said independently that they believed there was a contest on between the groundsmen to produce a 300-run surface. And they said it in jest and they smiled and everybody smiled. And once the smiles went away, I thought it was sad. Because a bowler cannot run in thinking, I'm playing on a 250 surface, 280 surface. Where am I going to vanish? The bowler has to run in thinking, I think I can get him out here. I think I can get him quiet there. I think I can build up pressure here. You know what? I've got the weapons. The bowler cannot be resigned to thinking that the elements are against him. And several times in this year's IPL, the elements were against the bowler. So the pitches and the balls. I mean, I know we talk about it year on year that these white balls don't swing. Trent Bolt was one of the bowlers who managed to swing it. There was a dramatic ball that Bhuvneshwar Kumar bowled to Sanju Samson. There's a bit of in-swing. I think Vaibhav Arora got a little bit of in-swing in some of the games. So some games, yes, there was swing, but it vanished way too quickly. So you then had this combination of an impact sub, of absolutely benign pitches, and a ball that wasn't doing very much in the air or off the pitch, and it just became a very heady batting concoction. It also gave rise to a particular kind of player, and let's look at one specifically, and that's Jake Fraser-McGurk from Australia. Do we know if he's a wow player? What we do know is in these conditions, he is something else. He came in here from the Big Bash. The numbers weren't as dramatic as they are over here. So what I would like to see at the end of an IPL is a player like Fraser-McGurk suddenly faced with a ball that's swinging a little bit, or maybe a track that's got a little bit of zip in it, and where the ball doesn't come in straight lines, or maybe it stops a little bit, grips a little bit, turns a little bit. At the end of the season, you've got 600 runs. Everyone stands up and applauds and says, well played, Jake Fraser-McGurk. So I think he's a fantastic talent, but because everything was stacked in favor of one kind of batter, we didn't discover enough. I've got another theory that I've talked to Bish and I've talked to a lot of my other friends about, and once we sort the pitches out, maybe the answer will sort itself out. But if you're playing on pitches like these, I think we need a ball that swings a little bit more, maybe a little more pronounced seam. Try and play the equivalent of a Duke's red ball. Maybe the Duke's white ball can be used as well, where maybe it swings for 6 overs, 7 overs, 8 overs. It's got a pronounced seam. You hit the deck, it'll nip around a little bit, and it'll ask questions of the batter. So that is the one primary factor, to my mind, that affected this year's IPL, that it just became a little too one-sided in favor of the batter. And you realize that as the season wore along, that's what I said at the top, that sometimes the pitches just gripped a little bit. You saw in Mullanpur that a player like Harsha Patel came into his own. You saw occasionally a game in Lucknow, 1 or 2 games in Chennai where the pitches went back to being what they were. But those were isolated. They were it became far too easy. And I know that critics will turn around and say, but Sunil Narine did well, but Jasprit Bumrah did well, or Ravindra Jadeja had a pretty good economy rate. Those bowlers are very rare. I mean, you can never talk about what it is for bowling by looking at a Jasprit Bumrah, who I thought was just one of the great stars. I don't know what metric is used to define the best player in the tournament, but it will be very difficult to look beyond Jasprit Bumrah for what he did with the ball. And and Sunil Narayan, as I said, for just coming back in both forms of the game. But there was far too much happening in favor of the batter.
So thank you for watching and do subscribe to this channel.